This is the Saturday Morning Special from Slasher Sports.
Good morning and happy Saturday to you all. It is October 1st, 2022, and it's the Saturday Morning Special here for SlasherU over at Slasher Sports. Hey, real quick before we get started, it's good. We're already taken care of. Billy Joe Armstrong has been notified. September is over. All right, so fantastic. We got that knocked out of the way. Steve, good morning. Welcome in. It's going to be another great Saturday morning here, another great college football weekend. We've already seen some great games in the last few nights, but now we're getting ready to give you the Saturday six-pack and a few other topics in this power hour to get you ready for today.
Yeah, and thankfully it looks like even though weather is going to affect games to a certain degree, certainly not to the extent that we might have thought earlier in the week. For all those that are still suffering or having to catch this on the archives because you have no power yet, thanks for still checking us out. We're thinking about you, but college football goes on. No matter what, college football goes on. So that can be a good thing, I think, sometimes.
That's right. Absolutely. Yeah. Give us an opportunity to get our mind off some things. No doubt about it. We already got someone in the comments. Looks like Drixley seems like becoming a friend of the show. So welcome and excited to be here for the show. Welcome to
welcome, Drixley.
Special. So again, welcome in everyone. Send in your comments and questions. We'll answer them during the show. We did leave some time to make sure we get some listener questions at the end. But if we have something that makes sense during our topic, we'll definitely get you involved with that as well. We want to engage with you while we're here. That's the point of the live show. So we're really excited. So with that being said, let's get started because we got a lot to talk about. We're going to give you our Saturday six-pack as always. We're going to talk about some bubble teams like we did last week. We think we still have some opportunities to do that as well. Steve's got a really good one, and I think I got a good one as well. Obviously, give you our misfits picks, and we'll carry on with the rest of the day and get you ready for a Saturday morning special. All right. So, Steve, you ready to rock and roll? Let's get into our first ones of the day. The first game is Kentucky versus Ole Miss, and this game's going to be fun. Now, initially, Steve, when I look at this game, I saw the odds, and Ole Miss is favored by 6.5, over-unders in the mid-50s somewhere. Both these teams are high-scoring offenses, but right off the bat, I'm a little shocked that Kentucky is the underdog. And the reason I think that is we've seen Kentucky play Florida. We saw that football game. Florida is probably the toughest competitor that Kentucky's seen so far. But who have we seen Ole Miss play? They had a tough game against Tulsa last week. They just squeaked by with a win. I think they only won by 7 or 8, if I remember correctly. Mm-hmm. And then on the for Big Blue, you got one of the best quarterbacks in the land. Will Levis is one, if not the best, he is one of the best. We are definitely going to be seeing him play on Sundays. What a fantastic football player. I'm excited for this one. If you haven't noticed, I'm leaning a little bit towards Kentucky in this one. I don't know if it's enough to take Ole Miss on the money line or anything like that. I think Kentucky wins this game. They're getting 6.5 points as well, so that's definitely where I'm leaning towards in a bet. Where do you feel on this game? I'm excited for this one though.
Oh, I am too, and again, like you said, Levis has been unbelievable, and he's probably the most typical NFL quarterback profile. I mean, I'm really big on Frank Harris. There's a lot of quarterbacks out there that are going to gain a lot of attention throughout the year, but he profiles as a step back in the pocket thrower. He can still run the ball. Don't get me wrong. It's not like he's immobile, but he profiles as a pro quarterback. But the thing that really is most important to Kentucky is that their star running back, Chris Rodriguez, is back off of suspension. He ran for over 1,300 yards last year, 9 touchdowns. Kentucky's rushing offense I don't think it's at the bottom, but it's pretty close to the bottom, in the FBS. If he comes in and can contribute with anything in this game, I mean, I'm not saying he's going to break out for 200 yards or whatever, but if he can prove that he is game ready, that's just going to open up the field for Levis to pick Ole Miss apart. Ole Miss has had some struggles, on defense. They Ole Miss is going to have to control the ball in order to be able to stay in it. I'm really shocked at this line too. I think a lot of it is SEC teams at home. I think that really dictates the line in the 90% of the time, unless you have like a Alabama Vanderbilt kind of a situation where there's a lot of diversity there. But no,
Mhm.
yeah, I'm all over Kentucky. I can't see a bet that I would make that I would take Ole Miss in. That's how confident I am in Kentucky in this game.
I'm really actually quite interested in how this home field or the attendance is going to look like. It's an 11 a.m. Central Time start for this one. We know that there's been some attendance issues of the beginning of the game and the beginning of the third quarter at Ole Miss lately because of it being a party school. I know we were actually just reading an article and talking about it earlier this week about
Mm-hmm.
how Lane Kiffin feels about the fans, about they're not really showing up and they're too busy partying in the Grove. I'm interested to see if that 11 a.m. start time and the fact that we've had some weather across the United States and especially in the Southeast, if that's going to make an impact. See if that's going to hurt them whatsoever. I think obviously you're right. That could be a big play. SEC being at home might be why the spread is. Yeah. But looking at Kentucky, they're only averaging 81 yards per game on the ground. Bringing Rodriguez back, regardless, is going to be huge. We already see them as a top 10 team in the country. Now, I know that's
Yes.
a little controversial. I don't know if I really truly feel they're a top 10 team yet. If they win this football game, then we can have another discussion. Maybe that might come into our overreaction conversations on Monday. But if they can get that run game going, this is a team that's going to be battling for that third spot in the SEC, and that's nothing to bat an eye about. That's a very impressive, an impressive thing to have on your resume this year.
I see. I'm the opposite. I've been high on Kentucky all year. They have shown me that they have earned that top 10 slot. The fact that they did not have Rodriguez and they haven't been able to generate any kind of a rushing attack really, yet still have been able to put up points. They've beaten the teams they've needed to beat. There's the two colossals in the SEC of Alabama and Georgia, but still, I mean, Kentucky. It would not surprise me if somehow Kentucky could play their way into having three teams from the SEC in the college playoff. That's how high I am on them. I think defensively, a lot of people overlook their defense. They're very physical. They're an intimidating defense. That catches the eyes of voters as you go down throughout the season. I think now it's still kind of, well, it's a cute story, Kentucky. That's great. It's somebody other than Alabama or Georgia to talk about, but Kentucky's for real, and I think they're going to really take the hammer down on Ole Miss on this one and to prove their point that like we do belong in this conversation.
All right. So as you can hear, we both really are taking Kentucky here. They're 6.5-point underdogs, so we're taking the points on this one. Over under 54.5. With this one, I think especially with the run game of Kentucky, that was one of the biggest concerns. I'm going to slam the over if I was going to play that one. I think I would just play the money line, or I'm sorry, just the spread on this one though. If I was actually playing it, which I will actually once this show's over, I'll put my bets in. I'm going to play Kentucky plus 6.5. I'm going to leave the over under alone, but if I was going to give a recommendation, I would hit the over.
I might go with the under only because I think Ole Miss is going to try to control the clock. But when plays have to be made, when the big run has to be made by Rodriguez, when Levis has to make the big pass, it's going to happen. And Kentucky's just going to keep. Maybe they might toy with Ole Miss early. And just one thing about Lane Kiffin and the attendance thing. This is a college football game, not a pro football game. Okay. If the students want to go out and have a party out in the Grove or tailgate or whatever it is. That's part of the college experience.
I
So
agree.
Lane Kiffin needs to shut up. He just needs to shut up. Okay. You've got plenty of boosters buying tickets, and you're just looking for reasons as to why you're going to lose this game at home. So just shut up.
It's a party. Yeah, it's part of the college experience.
Yes.
Not only if you're a college student as well. I mean, your alumni, your boosters, they want to enjoy the growth. You're seeing that more and more with colleges, even small colleges, even Old Dominion. The games that I go to, they have Kaufman Mall open, and they have tailgating and cash bars and things. Now, it's not. I'm sure it's not anything crazy like an SEC game, but it's growing that part of the experience. It wants to be a full thing when it comes to sports, and I don't blame them one bit whatsoever. It brings in more audience, not somebody who's just there for the game. Somebody's there to have a good time and enjoy their Saturday and get that weekend entertainment in. So I'm all for it. I agree. I think Lane Kiffin, obviously, he has a job to do to make sure that his team is prepared and ready. He wants the most support they can possibly get. They're going to get that, especially if they keep winning. But don't be shocked if they look at the camera and they pan it out at the beginning of the game during the opening kickoff and the seats don't look that filled, or after halftime, the exact same thing. They'll probably have a slow get back to their seats between the halves in this one. All right, let's move on to the next one here. Rolling right around with the Saturday six-pack. And the next one on the list, we're going to stay in the SEC, and we're going to talk about Alabama and Arkansas. This one's interesting. This one's really interesting to me. Alabama goes on the road again. Last time we saw Alabama on the road against a pretty decent team, they almost showed. They almost got an L against Texas. And when they were in Austin, they did not show up very well. They were not disciplined. That was probably the biggest issue of Alabama in that one. I don't see that happening in this game. I think Nick Saban definitely took care of the penalties and the discipline of this team. I'm sure that he was not happy whatsoever. That practice week was probably dreadful for the Crimson Tide. Heading into Arkansas, though. Arkansas, I saw something really funny about this team, and I actually really think it makes sense. A lot of people like to call them quote-unquote America's team, and let me tell you why. They say they haven't won a lot yet. They have a coach that is, likable, and they're just one of those teams that they are not afraid to throw the ball, but they'll also, smash mouth, put it in your face the way that your grandpa would like to play football. It's like they're America's team. It's like that's actually pretty interesting. I don't know if America's team, quote unquote, the Arkansas Razorbacks, are going to be able to win this game as they play Alabama, though. They're a pretty strong underdog, but this could be one of those games, just like we saw against the Longhorns in Austin, that Alabama might show some of their bad sides, might be exposed. I don't think the crowd's going to be anything like we saw in Austin. It was a record crowd with College Game Day, over 100,000 people there. I'm still going to take Alabama on this one, but I think this one is not as bad with the points. Now, I'm going to bring the spread up in a minute. I have to take Alabama on the money line on this one.
Alabama has never lost to Arkansas.
Period.
Since Nick Saban has been the head coach at Alabama. This very well could be the week that Nick Saban loses to Arkansas.
Man, you're just full of upset. I love it. If you haven't noticed, there's another upset that you just gave on the Friday show yesterday. I'm going to keep that in my pocket. If you want to hear that, head on back to the 5 for Friday show. Steve, you're full of them. All right, come on, bring it on. What you got?
Okay, it's going to come down. Arkansas's defense, it is the best defense in the nation. And I didn't look at the statistics on this. I just look at watching the game. They're the best defense in the country, bar none. They're aggressive. They force turnovers. And I really think that's going to get inside the head of Bryce Young. I do. The Alabama quarterback is marvelous. Okay. I mean, he just brings so much to the table. He just has not faced a defense like this Arkansas defense. And I really think you mentioned earlier the penalties. I think that mistakes are going to happen because Alabama's just not used to a physical being overmatched physically. It's sort of like back in Rocky IV when Rocky Balboa finally cut Drago, and Drago was like, "Oh my God, I'm human, I'm bleeding, whatever." This might be a case of this. So while I'm going to pick Arkansas for the sake of the show, I certainly would take Arkansas with points
Yeah.
and any bet you could lay out there. But it's not going to shock me if Arkansas beats Alabama. I think they have all of the prerequisites to give Alabama all they can have. I think Texas has shown that Alabama is vulnerable defensively. Even everybody seems to think that, oh no, Alabama it's a wall. It's the Great Wall of Birmingham or whatever the heck city that they're in, Tuscaloosa, I guess it is. I think Alabama is going to do that, and Arkansas has a quarterback in KJ Jefferson that I think can also get the job done against Alabama's defense.
This is the first true test, I think, for Alabama. Obviously, we saw them against Texas. Texas was in that position where they weren't ready to compete yet. I think Texas really just showed up with Quinn Ewers, and it was an excitement. I think if Quinn Ewers stayed in the game, they beat Alabama.
Yes.
But truly, Arkansas, I think, is the first true test of them. When you talk about their defense, just like you did, I think they have one of the best run defenses, but their secondary is very concerning to me. They give up a lot of yards through the air, and that's something that is a concern to me, and probably why the spread is so high, because Bryce Young is able to find those flaws in defensive secondary, and he could really expose Arkansas's defense. I'm with you, though, on the points, though. The spread is minus 17 for Alabama, so I definitely would take Arkansas with the points here. I think Arkansas can at least keep this game close. I'm not going as far as you are with the upset. I think it's possible, entirely possible, especially while I'm taking the points here. I think Alabama can win this game by just a score or maybe 10 points at most. I'm taking Arkansas with the points at plus 17 for them. The over-under at 61. If I think Arkansas can win this game, I'm going to slam the under on that one. However, just like I said, if Bryce Young can find those holes in that secondary and they just can't stop it, this game can get over real fast. We saw what they did against Vanderbilt. Obviously not the same kind of defense. Alabama, when they get rolling in that passing offense, they easily score 40, 50 points. It's like nothing. You take a blink, you go up, get a drink, you come back, and it's 41-3. So this is something that I definitely can see it going either way. And I think it all depends on Arkansas's secondary, 100%.
Yeah, and Alabama's offensive line really is a secret weapon week in, week out. So that is something that could be perhaps the most determining factor if Alabama is going to pull this one off. And Arkansas just cannot keep committing stupid penalties. They got to stop shooting themselves in the foot. They cannot do that against Alabama. They have to play the perfect game. I think they have that perfect game in them. So that's why I'm going with Arkansas on the upset. But this is the type of game where that kind of hammers home the point that SEC football is the best brand of college football on the landscape today.
Hard to disagree with that. I want to take Arkansas with the money line. I really do. That helped my odds with my P6 parlay I do with every Saturday 6-pack. I just can't, but I'm going to take the points. I'm going to take the points, though, with Arkansas. All right, here we go. Game 3. We move out of the SEC. We move into the Big 12. This game, to me, has a lot of exciting features. This could be the path to the Big 12 championship, in my mind. We have a lot of games that are still going to really determine that moving forward, because as we've talked about on shows past, there are 8 teams, maybe even 9, if you want to, that can compete for the Big 12 championship. There's not really a team that is completely out of it. We don't, in the Big 12, there's not a Vanderbilt or, really Vanderbilt's one I think of, a team that's just low grade, especially after we've seen games like Kansas and step up like that. The Big 12 is really fun, very competitive. Unfortunately, that's probably going to keep the winner out of the college football playoff because it is so competitive. But regardless, that's for another story. In this case, though, Oklahoma State versus Baylor. At the beginning of the season, Steve, and we were talking about it during a lot of our previews, Baylor was doubted to win the Big 12 championship. After winning it last year, they talked about who's going to win the Big 12 championship, and they'd have all these polls up, and they'd have Texas, Oklahoma State, or the field. They didn't give an actual single option to the defending champion Baylor Bears. And that's so wild to me. And we talked about how they're not getting any respect. More that the season goes on, nothing against Baylor, but I kind of understand why they did it because of how much depth this conference has. Okay, fine. Regardless, Baylor is still a fantastic football team. They are a fantastic football team, 3-1 in this one. The only loss, obviously, coming to BYU in that crazy 2 overtime game. That could have went either way. This team could be an undefeated team without a doubt. BYU is a good football team. They're ranked or were ranked at one point during the time. They just came off a win against Iowa State, another great Big 12 matchup. But when you look at it, Oklahoma State side, we know what Gundy can do. We saw them start off slow against Central Michigan, still won the game in fashion, but gave a lot of points up, a lot of yards. Oklahoma State is still a fiery offense. It's a tough game for me to pick. I think this is a really close spread as well. So I think even Vegas is going to have a hard time picking this one. I think the only reason that Baylor's a 2.5-point favorite is because they're the home team. I think this is really an even split on who you think is going to win this game. I'll let you pick first who you think is going to win this football game.
I'm going to pick Baylor. I have warmed up to Baylor as the season went on. Like you said, there were so many doubters, and we even said we don't understand why there's so many doubters. And then watching Baylor throughout the season so far, and again, it's still early. I don't get why there's so many doubters. Blake Shapen is not going to, open your eyes or blow the doors off you. He's going to just work the short passing game, open up the gaps for a very good rushing attack. And he's just very methodical. Baylor is a very methodical offensive football team. You want them to be Oklahoma or Oklahoma State or some of the really great offensive juggernauts in the Big 12. They just plod along. And at the end of the game, you look up at the scoreboard and like, oh, hey, Baylor won that game. And it might not seem like they won it because they might be, there's going to be more time of possession with their opponent. There's going to be more, total yards for their opponent maybe. But Baylor just gets it done. Now, Oklahoma State, they're explosive. I mean, they have all kind of talent. Spencer Sanders and that the whole passing game is just, breathtaking. When they have the ball, you're sort of like inching to the edge of the seat saying, okay, when's it going to happen? When's the big play going to happen? Yeah. But who have they played?
Exactly.
Again, I'm high on Central Michigan as a MAC guy, and they played better than I even ever imagined that they could, but that arguably could be their toughest opponent all year to this point. Okay, so how explosive are they really going to be against a team like Baylor that has a reliable defense? I don't know. So I'm taking Baylor 2.5 points. Yeah, they're going to cover that. I wonder what I'm sure you're going to tell me what the over-under is. I'm not sure that I would go with an over in this game, believe it or not.
55.5.
No, I think I would still push the under, only because I think that highly of Baylor's defense and their ability potentially to keep the Cowboys' offense off the field. So I'm going to go with Baylor across the board. And I think we're gonna punch the under on that one.
Okay, gotcha. I'm not sure. I'll play the under with you as well because I'm really not sure how I feel about that one. But I'm with you on Baylor as well, and it's really just like you said. It's because we don't know who Oklahoma State really is yet. Their identity is not out, even though they're an undefeated football team. Their best matchup has been Central Michigan. If they win this football game, we're gonna have more ways to talk about them. But
yes.
Baylor at least has that win against Iowa State. Now, Iowa State's not the best team in the Big 12, but they're a bigger competition standpoint compared to Central Michigan. This game does rely around Spencer Sanders, though. If Spencer Sanders can get going, Baylor's in trouble. I don't care what defense is out there. Spencer Sanders has the opportunity to expose any defense. He is incredible. But if they find a way to contain Spencer Sanders, because the rest of their run game for Oklahoma State isn't the run game that we've seen in the past with like Hubbard or anything in years past. I think that Oklahoma State's going to have a tough time. That's why I'm going to take Baylor with 2.5 points. Yeah, I got Baylor winning this football game. I think we see Baylor move to 4-1. I think they get an opportunity to be in the discussions to right now they're ranked 16th. Obviously, that would put them at least in the top 15. I think we could see some discussions of them with an argument of getting back into the top 10 after this football game.
Yeah, the one other thing that I want to point out is that Iowa State did shut down the Baylor run game. So that is potentially a cause for concern, especially if Sanders goes hog wild and just runs all over the field. But I think that might have been an outlier. I think Baylor's going to find a way to control it. But yeah, I'm looking forward to this game. I mean, there's so many games to watch now as we get deeper into the season. It's hard to say I'm going to watch this whole game start to finish, but I'm going to be tuning into this one on a pretty regular basis to see what's going on.
Even though that run game was stopped for the most part in that that Iowa State Baylor matchup, only 123 yards on the ground for the Bears. The Baylor Bears still found a way to have almost 35 minutes in possession time. Right. That's exactly what Baylor does, though. They find a way to just move the game, run the pace, and I don't see that changing in this one. That's why I got Baylor winning this football game. All right, here we go. Moving on to the next one. We're moving right along with our Saturday six-pack. Again, if you're here, thank you for joining. I do see that we have a few people watching, so thank you for joining us on the Saturday morning special. Be sure to send in your comments and questions. We'll answer them during the show. We love engaging with you guys, so thanks for stopping by. All right, game number 4. This one. Now we get into the ACC. This is where I get a little more excited. Now, don't get me wrong. I still love SEC football, still love Big 12 football, but ACC just does something to me. These football teams, it just gets me excited. Wake Forest and Florida State. We saw what happened last week with Wake Forest. This football team's exciting. There was some issues, obviously, in their secondary. Clemson woke up a little bit. We saw DJ Ukulele finally get some excitement, finally start seeing that he is not that quarterback that we saw last year. And then obviously Sam Hartman breaking a Wake Forest record for 6 touchdown passes, almost could have been 7. They lose a heartbreaker in overtime. They only move it back 1 spot in the rankings. I believe now they're 21st, if I remember correctly. I don't have that up in front of me, but yeah, they're a good football team. On the flip side, I don't think anyone, maybe the Florida State quarterback booster club that we saw Mike Norvell talking at in the preseason this year, all fired up like it was a sermon, might be excited for it or might have even predicted it. But I don't think anyone predicted Florida State to be this good of a football team. There were some woes and some concerns that Jordan Travis might be hurt and out for the season. Well, that was not a concern last week. This team is fantastic. They look really good. And there's a reason why, even though Wake Forest just put on probably the game of their lives against Clemson, head into Florida State as the underdogs. What's your thoughts on this game? As you can see, I just hyped it up really well. I'm excited for this football game. There's some really good ACC matchups on today. Florida State's a hell of a football, hell of a football team. But Wake Forest, man, so are they. This can be a good matchup. What you got?
Well, simply stated, Wake Forest is a better football team than Florida State. And that's not taking anything away from Florida State. And Jordan Travis, again, another quarterback that's not going to, wow you, and you're not going to look at the analytics of it and all those things and say, boy, this guy I can see him leading an NFL team on a Sunday. He could be a backup, I think, because he is such a smart, good game manager. But Wake Forest, Sam Hartman, then you can end the conversation. As good as everything. Yeah. If you just say Sam Hartman, and I'm going to use the same argument in a game we're going to talk about in a little bit, but Sam Hartman is a difference maker, and he showed that on the big stage, against Clemson. I really think. And the other thing to think of is that Hartman's probably the best quarterback that Florida State has seen so far, as well as their defense has surprised us. I think, Sam Hartman's just a totally different breed of cat for them. they may have a more consistent offensive attack spread out down in Tallahassee, but Wake Forest. I mean, that had to have been so deflating because really they could have won that game. I don't want to put should have because Clemson's a good football team, but they could have won that game in a lot of different situations. And Wake Forest just flat out, uh, from their star down to the guy that'll never get off the bench, they're just a better football team at this point.
Okay.
We're having this conversation next year. I think Florida State's going to be a top 10 football team next year.
I'm glad that the conversations from Mike Norvell are finally over about him being in the hot seat, because that's obviously not the case anymore. And I also like that today, and especially with this segment, this one right here, you and I finally get to disagree on something. You know, that's great because we are usually on the same page, and we finally get to disagree on something almost wholeheartedly. I think Florida State's the better football team, and wholeheartedly, I think that the quarterbacks I think are pretty close. I will give the nod to Sam Hartman on that one. Don't get me wrong. I think Sam Hartman's a top-notch quarterback. Jordan Travis is really close, but Trayshawn Ward, the running back at Florida State, incredible. We've seen what Johnny Wilson could do at wide receiver, and he's not even supposed to be the top wide receiver for the Seminoles. You got Micah Pittman up there. And then you look on that defensive side, their secondary has been absolutely outstanding. That's something that Clemson has had an issue with, and Clemson had injuries in their secondary last week. Sam Hartman exposed that. I don't know if he has that way of doing that this week. I don't know if Sam Hartman can do that. Florida State has only allowed 165 yards per game through the air against their teams. Now, granted, they're not playing Clemson football teams week by week. They did play Louisville. They did play Boston College. They are on the lower level of the ACC, but they're still conference games. So you know how that goes. I think Florida State's a better football team in here. I think that's why they are a 6.5-point favorite. I think that's a lot of points, though. I'm not going to lie, because I do think that this game is a lot closer in skill. That's probably why you and I can make this disagreement of who's better. Looking at this spread, 6.5 points in favor of Florida State. The over-under 66 points. Looking at the game last week of how many points were put up in the game between Clemson and Wake Forest, makes you want to really chase that over. But again, that Florida State secondary really just gets me excited. But I think I would still push the over here. I think easily both these teams could hit 33 points apiece when Wake Forest is averaging 42 and Florida State's averaging 38. But when it comes to that spread, even though I think Florida State wins this football game, I don't know if they win by a full touchdown. So I would take Wake Forest with the points in this game.
Well, obviously, I'm picking Wake to win the games. But no, you're right. It's going to come down really to who has the ball last, and I think it's going to be Wake Forest. I think it's going to have the ball in Hartman's hand, and he is going to execute the final scoring drive, and that's going to have Wake Forest win outright. I think Florida State will control time of possession, but I don't think Hartman needs a whole lot of time of possession. And their defense, well, that could be troublesome for their defense because Wake Forest has been prone to giving up big plays at the wrong time. I'm still going Wake Forest all the way across the board. So again, I mean, if they're getting points, that's a bonus for you out there. I'm slamming the over. I think this is going to be a really exciting back and forth kind of a football game. I think Wake Forest is going to strike quicker, while Florida State's going to be more methodical, throughout the game and try to keep Hartman off the field. But I'm going Wake Forest all the way on this one.
Yeah, this will be the game at 3:30 that I have on my main TV without a doubt. I'm excited for it. This game's on ABC. Now, sorry, folks who are on Dish Network. I don't know if you saw this crazy stuff that happened overnight. Dish Network and Walt Disney Company decided that they're going to go into a contract dispute on October 1st. So if you have Dish, I said DirecTV, is Dish. You are not going to have ABC, ESPN, any of that stuff today. So get yourself a free trial to Hulu Live or something if you are in that spot, so you can at least get a week trial, because I'm sure they'll figure it out sooner or later. But you're going to get really pissed off if you can't watch college football. I'm not in that spot. I just saw that remark, so I thought I'd put that out there for you. But this game's going to be great. It's going to be on my main screen TV. Now, speaking of who's going to be on my main screen TV for the 7:30 matchup, that's this game. And this is to me, this is the game that I'm most excited for the entire weekend. There are some great games out there, but there's a reason why College Game Day is going to Clemson. NC State versus Clemson. We got number 5 in the nation versus number 10 in the nation, a top 10 matchup. We don't get these too often anymore, especially when they're in conference play, unless it's an SEC matchup. We don't get non-SEC top 10 matchups very often, Steve. How about I put it that way? We don't get those very often.
Fair enough. Yep.
We're getting that tonight at 7:30 Eastern. Will weather be a concern? I'm not sure, actually. I think there might be a little bit of wind. I don't know if it's going to be that much of a concern. I think it's probably moved on. I know it's moved on here in southeastern Virginia, so I'm sure that it's fine down in South Carolina.
Well, there's going to be, the field's going to be wet.
Oh, for sure.
And I think that's going to affect a lot of things that happen in this game. But I didn't mean to cut you off there, but
oh, you're good.
Let me just say, rock me, Devin Leary. Devin Leary, Devin Leary, Devin Leary, Devin Leary, Devin Leary. He, nice. I thought you might like that. He showed against Texas Tech last week.
He did.
That when the downfield game is taken away from him, he could still pick apart the defense by dunking and dinking, getting the little out routes for first downs and getting the job done. This, to me, will be the difference because I have all the faith in the world in Devin Leary, and I'm still on the fence about Ugalele or however pronounce your name.
I think you did good that time.
Yeah, I mean, because I think earlier you said ukulele. I'm like, well, wait a minute, ukulele, is that really how you pronounce it? But no, I think it's ukulele. I think is how you pronounce it.
Okay.
I just think the consistency factor gives me more confidence with NC State in this.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'm leaning a little bit towards that too, because not only has Leary been a good quarterback. Now I will say that DJ really showed up last week, and he showed himself that he's not that same quarterback from last year. That is cold hard facts. I don't think you could make that argument any different, that he is a way better quarterback than he was last year. I mean, you look at his stats alone, he only threw 9 touchdowns last year as a whole, 10 interceptions. This year he's got 10 touchdowns, 1 interception. He's already has more touchdowns this year than he has the entire season last year. So if you were a stat guy, you know that he's already been better. But seeing it on the field, his tenacity's been better. He's leading this team. You can tell that he is the leader. He doesn't have to worry about the freshman coming back and taking his job. I think that's long gone. I think that DJ is going to be able to take Clemson to wherever they're going this season. It's probably going to lead to an ACC championship, or at least in the championship game. This could be the matchup we see in the ACC championship. Who knows? We might be seeing a preview of it. I will say, though, that whoever wins this football game has a clear path to the ACC championship.
Yes.
I think we talked about that earlier about the Big 12, and there was a possibility. I think this is pretty clear cut that whoever wins this football game has a clear path to the ACC championship. Leary's been fantastic. He's only thrown 2 picks. We said DJ's only thrown 1. This defense, though, is what really gets me. They've only allowed 11 points per game, and they've played some pretty decent matchups. They haven't just, it's not like teams that we've seen in the past. They played East Carolina, which was a tough football game. They almost lost that one. East Carolina's been up and down. They've definitely been one of those teams to look out for. And then obviously the Texas Tech football game, they only let Texas Tech score 14 on a team that just scored almost 40 against Texas Longhorns. Clemson lets up points. Clemson, we saw it last week. They have issues with their secondary. Now, last week there was injuries. They had 3 of their secondary out. Looks like they're going to get some of those back, including Sheridan Jones, their senior from Norfolk, Virginia, I might add. So that should help them. That should help them out. However, secondary is still an issue for this team. I would say even with their starters out on the field, that is still their weakest spot on their entire team. Clemson's defense is still good. It's not a Brent Venables defense, although we have seen some good some good help from their new defensive coordinator. I'm leaning towards NC State on this one. Clemson's a 7-point favorite. I'm hitting NC State with the points. I think that they can keep this one close, if they don't win it, but I think that they can win this football game. I think they have a really good opportunity to do so. I think this atmosphere is going to be wild, though. But I don't know if it's going to be all Clemson. I think with College Game Day and it being a rivalry and being so close, I think when you watch College Game Day in a few minutes, you're going to see signs for both sides about Tiger Killers and NC State, and I'm sure you have a whole bunch from Tiger King as well up in there. But Clemson with a 7-point favorite. I'm going to take NC State with this one. Over under 45. As much as I love NC State's defense, I'm going to take the over on 45 points because Clemson lets up a lot. And even if it's a 21, a 28-21 final or something like that, obviously that hits the points. So I'm taking the over. I'm taking NC State with the points.
I'm taking NC State outright. I'm taking NC State, so obviously with the points. Let me think about the over-under while I just bring up one other point here. NC State's defense forces turnovers. They forced 4 turnovers against Texas Tech. Outside of Arkansas, North Carolina State's defense is my favorite one to watch. Again, and when we're talking about we're talking about football games, we're talking about watching a football game. Stats are nice. It's how you feel while you're watching that game. I root for the Wolfpack defense to make a big stop on third down. I mean, you wouldn't think, well, why are you rooting for a defense for a school that you didn't go to or don't really follow? It's that special of a defense. I do think the field conditions potentially could keep the aerial game in check to a little bit. So, and I think it's going to be a sloppy game on Clemson's part because I think North Carolina State's defense is going to force the turnovers. So I'm going to go the under, but I'm not going to bet that anyway. But if I was going to make a suggestion, I would say, hey, go the under, but I'm not super convinced about that. But I am convinced North Carolina State wins this game, and North Carolina State and quite possibly Clemson, this is going to be a rematch, in the ACC championship game.
Yeah, I agree. I think it could be. I think it really could be. I think Pitt's going to find their way out of it. I think Wake Forest, I think that loss is going to be something that hurts them, especially if Clemson wins this football game. I think then we'll see who lost worse. It really will come into play.
Right.
Looking at the rest of the schedule, I think NC State's got a better chance at that one, though, if Clemson wins this football game. So this is going to be a good football matchup. I'm ready for it. This is going to be the game of the week in my mind. We got a comment in here from Drixley. It says NC State. Looks like they're taking NC State as well. So it looks like we're not the only crazy ones out there. So that's good to know. That's good to know in that one. So awesome. Good to hear. So thanks for commenting in. All right, moving on to the final game of the Saturday 6-pack here. And we're going to talk about California and Washington State. I'm looking forward to this one. This is a Pac-12 matchup here. This isn't anything big highlighted compared to the other games we've mentioned, but I think this is one of those that you could really sneak in to be an exciting matchup. Now, this is on the Pac-12 network, so not many people are going to be able to watch this football game. It's just usually how that matches up. I can't wait. We've talked about it in the past, but I can't wait till the Pac-12 finally figures out a media deal so where we can get more Pac-12 that's not at 11 o'clock at night on the Eastern time on ESPN. Like the ones during the daytime, we can finally watch those because the Pac-12 network is just not accessible to the majority of the United States. But this game's pretty close. We saw Cal play some good football this year, and then obviously we saw Washington State play some good football as well with their recent win over Wisconsin. That's obviously going to be I think that's going to be a game we talk about a lot this year, is how Washington State beat Wisconsin, and then obviously it could bring the uprise of Paul Chryst, regardless, all that stuff. But this one's close in my mind here. Washington State's a 4-point favorite at home. The over-under is 53.5. California just coming off a win against Arizona, 49-31. Their only loss on the season was a 7-point loss to Notre Dame. And then Washington State just came off a 3-point loss to Oregon in a pretty high-scoring matchup, 44-41. I like the 4-point favorites for Washington State here. I think they can get it done. But I don't think this will be one of those matchups where we see it go any farther than that. I think this is a one-score game at most, 10-point Washington State win. I like Cal, don't get me wrong, but I think Washington State is a better football team.
Oh, no, I agree on that. And I'm glad you talked about things like, the Pac-12 network and, just the general, and really there's a general bias against the Pac-12. Perception becomes reality. Pac-12 has been down the last couple of years, so the Pac-12 must still be down. They are not. The Pac-12 has been a pleasant surprise. Is it a little top heavy? Okay, I'll give you that. I'll give you that much. But you've seen teams like Cal give Notre Dame all the trouble they could possibly hope for. Washington State, their transfer quarterback, Cameron, is it Cameron Ward?
Yeah.
Yeah, Cameron Ward. Sorry, senior moment. He's gotten better every week. Now, he was like the big hot guy as far as FCS quarterback transfers coming in. Washington State, nailed him down. He keeps getting better, and that bodes well for Washington State. Why this game is important is that literally, especially with the UCLA upset last night at Washington, which I personally didn't see that coming. I don't know about you, Christian, but I certainly didn't see that coming.
No, not really. When you watch the game, though, I did watch the game. I think Washington lost that game for themselves. Penix threw one bad interception. We saw some issues with them fumbling for a safety, defensive penalties. So I'm not going to be. We'll talk about this, I'm sure, later on during the week, and I don't want to get that too much in our game preview. But I think UCLA is a strong team. Obviously, any team that's 5-0 deserves to be ranked, but I'm still not sold on them.
Yeah, but now with a result like that, every game for the upper echelon teams in the Pac-12 become must-wins. For Washington, Washington State, Oregon, USC, UCLA, Utah, they have to keep winning in conference if they want any hope to come out with a conference title. And that's great. Where before you only had a couple, I really think now that field of teams that you have to talk about that could win a Pac-12 title keeps expanding. And I think that bodes well for the Pac-12, assuming they don't be forced into extinction by all these conference mergers and everything like that. And that has to be in the back of a lot of coaches' minds in the Pac-12. How is this going to affect my football team if they keep hearing stories about how the Pac-12 is going away, or how we haven't been able to nail down our deal with Amazon or whatever it is? I mean, these are kids. Okay, these aren't like 10-year NFL veterans here. These are kids. They're going to be affected by that. They want to be on TV. They want to perhaps have a pathway to a professional football career, even if it's only, even if it's in the CFL up in Canada, or if it's in one of the arena leagues that are out there. I mean, they still want to be able to keep playing football beyond their college days. So that's a concern. But I think these are the kinds of games that, again, you wish were on TV, because people have just been poo-pooing the Pac-12 all season. And I think the Pac-12 has shown, look, we've got some good football teams in this conference.
I'm with you 100%. All right, there's our Saturday six-pack. That was a good one. I think we finally got some thoughts on each side of the game. We didn't agree like we have every week so far. I can finally stop saying that. Awesome. Good to hear. All right, we're into our Misfit games. It's time to get the Misfits. Let's go pretty quick on these so we can get some thoughts on our other topics. So first is my Misfit game of the week. And I hate that this game qualifies as a Misfit. And the reason that, if you followed our show, the only qualification is that the Misfit games cannot include a top 25 team. Steve, why is Kansas not a top 25 team? That drives me absolutely nuts. I don't understand the AP. To me, this just makes the AP just absolutely pointless. I know that there's obviously it's a terrible system to begin with, but that's what college football goes off of. Kansas is a good football team. And not only is the AP taking Kansas out of the top 25 consideration, Vegas is saying Iowa State is a 3.5-point favorite on the road against an undefeated Jayhawks team. No way. Absolutely. I'm totally against that. Daniels has been one of the best quarterbacks in all of college football. He is so fun to watch. What Kansas is doing is incredible. I am riding the Jayhawks train all the way to the station, and I'm gonna keep taking them on the bets until they lose a football game. And it's not this week. It's not this week. I got Kansas in this game as a 3.5 point favorite underdog as an undefeated team. I just can't believe it. Kansas by far.
Oh, I agree. It's something. I saw them. They did a good job when they beat WVU. They just keep. They play their football game. They don't try to change to the opponents. They just play their football game, and it's good when teams like Kansas are part of the conversation. And yes, the AP poll is questionable. On their own college football podcast, they cop to the fact that once again, perception is reality. We need to see more. Show me more of Kansas. It's okay if Notre Dame loses to Marshall. We're still going to maybe believe in Notre Dame somewhere down the road, and teams in the SEC, teams in the in the Big Ten. Okay, we're gonna give them benefit of the doubt. But a team like Kansas that is emerging, and nobody saw them turn the offensive part of their game around this quickly. I mean, they have a good head coach. You could see that it was going to happen, but for it to happen so suddenly, I mean, that's a great thing for college football. So again, I don't get the whole Iowa State favorite on the road. I don't get it. There has to be something that we're not privy to or that they see when they go through the analytics and the strategies. But I think Kansas. I'd imagine that Jayhawk fans are pretty ticked off that they are not ranked yet, and they're going to cheer loudly, and their team, especially this offense, is going to try to drive home a point that we are not only a top 25 team, we may be a top 15 team. Really, when you look at how they played, I think they're inside the top 20. They're not just between the 20 and the 25 mark.
I'm with you 100% on that one. I think Kansas has one of the longest droughts, if not the longest drought in Division I football for a Power 5 conference to not be ranked. That is going to change come tomorrow, come Monday when the new AP comes out, because they're going to be 5-0, right? Yeah, they're already 4-0. They're going to be 5-0 after this game. All right, let's head on. We didn't forget about the FCS, and Steve, I see your misfit pick, Youngstown State versus North Dakota State. This is an excellent one. I'm really excited about this football game. Youngstown State coming off a loss against a top 10 FBS team in Kentucky, and then obviously everybody knows about North Dakota State, the quarterback factory in the NFL. Take me through this one.
I think I really want to focus, I think, my misfit games going forward on the FCS, because if we're going to talk about college football, we need to talk about all levels of college football. And it's so easy to get swept up into the SEC and the Power 5 conferences, or teams like Appalachian State or Marshall that pull off just unforeseen upsets. But the FCS is as much college football. When we talk about game day experience, are they packing stadiums of 100,000? They are not, but they are packing consistently to capacity at places like North Dakota State and even Youngstown State. Now, Youngstown State has fallen out of the top 25. They're not in the FCS top 25, but they are a traditional FCS power. So and they tend to run pro-style offenses and defenses. So even if they are going on the road, you have to consider them part of the equation as far as, can they upset a team like North Dakota State? They're the North Dakota State, depending on the poll you look at, is the consensus #1 team in the country. A lot of people will tell you it's Montana. Some people will even tell you it's South Dakota State. This is their homecoming game for North Dakota State, so another reason I wanted it to be a game that gets featured. North Dakota State, after the halftime festivities are over, I don't want to say they wake up, because they're in every game and they play hard every play, but they just seem to run away every single week once the second half begins. They put up well over 240 yards against South Dakota last year in the second half alone. Youngstown State has been giving up a lot of turnovers. They cannot do that here against North Dakota State. North Dakota State forces a lot of turnovers, so it'll be interesting to see actually what happens. In this game, I'm picking North Dakota State. I think they need to bounce back and prove that they are the undisputed number one team in the FCS rankings. But if you can find this game on one of the streaming services, or if you have things like Fubo or whatever, where you've got like Fubo game 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, you might be able to find that game there. I had it here where it might be broadcast, and of course I lost it, so I'm going to have to just kind of vamp a little bit. But if we're going to talk about the FCS every week, we're going to need to talk about North Dakota State every week. We're going to need to talk about that, the Big Sky and Missouri Valley conferences every week. And it's going to be a fun game. Youngstown State is as close to a pro-style FCS team as you're going to find, and it'll make the game interesting early, but I think North Dakota State pulls away late.
If it's anything like last year's game, North Dakota State won on the road against Youngstown State 49-17. This game you could find on ESPN Plus. Most of the FCS games you can find ESPN Plus. Definitely a good streaming service for college football fans. 2 o'clock Eastern time over in the Fargo Dome. I love that name, the Fargo Dome. So that should be pretty fun. I'm excited for that one. All right, Steve, there are our games of the week. We got a few topics to cover before we let you out of here. This is going to be a good matchup, though. I'm excited for FCS. I'm glad that we're going to finally start talking about some more FCS. So good to hear. All right, so let's start off with our Bubble Watch teams. All right, so we talked about this segment last week as well. We said what team needs to win this week to remain in the talks, to get the 6 wins, to make it to a bowl game. Last week we had some teams. I took Rutgers. They did not win, so a little concerned about Rutgers. This week, though, we're on a new path. I'm going to let you start this week. Who do you have for your Bubble Watch?
My Bubble Watch team is West Virginia. I don't think anyone anticipates them to win the Big 12. Good football team, but they're a little bit in transition, I guess you could say. But they played Pitt really tough.
They did.
And now that Kansas has made their mark on the FBS landscape, now that loss to Kansas is not as devastating. Certainly when I was watching that game, I was having to dab away the tears a little bit, saying, oh, this is going to be a long year. But I think West Virginia could very well be a bowl team. And even if they just have to stay with Texas, they just have to, and I think they have the kind of offensive, defensive playmaker balance where they can make Texas nervous throughout. JT Daniels, I think he has done more than I certainly expected, and I get to watch a lot of West Virginia football living here in Pittsburgh. They're on the local cable feeds, and they're always on the various other networks. And their converted tight end / running back, Donaldson, he's a freshman. I can't wait to watch him for all 4 years. He has just been, and nobody really talks about him except for you and I off the air. He is just another guy where you're edging to the edge of your seat because you know if they're going to hand the ball up to him, if they're going to throw the ball to him out of the backfield, which makes him that danger. Being a converted end, having him coming out of the backfield, that is huge. West Virginia could very well be fun. And as we saw in the backyard brawl games in week 0 that opened the season, really, they have defensive playmakers. They can force turnovers at critical times. So if they win this game, they have a ball. They're going to a bowl. But I don't believe that they're going to win this game. But if they can keep it close and then they can pick off another 4 wins, I think it would be hard to deny West Virginia a trip, especially a trip to like a more maybe regional bowl where their fan base can travel better. That's the biggest complaint from West Virginia fans being in the Big 12. it's not that easy to travel from Morgantown, West Virginia to any of the schools in the Big 12. It just isn't. So I think it would make them a team that you'd want to invite to a bowl like the Armed Forces Bowl or the Pinstripe Bowl or whatever it would be, because their fan base is passionate and will travel. So this, to me, they're a bubble team. If they get blown out by Texas, I think that could take them out. Even if they get to 6 wins, that maybe they're not going to be invited to a bowl. But for me, West Virginia is going to be a fascinating watch, not only this week but for the rest of the season.
Yeah, I like that. We got a message from Drixley. He says West Virginia, interesting view, and also said it would be cool to see them get a bowl. Yeah, I agree on that one. They got 8 games left, and they got to go 4-4 to be eligible for a bowl. As of right now, before the games start and we get a new AP ranking, 4 of their teams they play left are unranked. 4 are ranked.
Right.
So this is one of those games where Texas is unranked. So if you want to play that game, yeah, this is a must win. They have a tough schedule because they are all Big 12 for the rest of the year. They're all conference games. And we talked about how in depth the Big 12 could be. So they could go 6-2 or they could go 2-6. And it would not be a surprise which way it goes because of how tough this division is. I think Texas is a must win for West Virginia if they want to be bowl eligible. I think that they have a hard time getting to 6 if they don't win against Texas because they go right to Baylor, then they go to Texas Tech. Texas Tech is not ranked, but that's a team that could easily be ranked. TCU, Iowa State. When we know about Iowa State, I mean they're favored against Kansas for damn sake. So and then they have a gauntlet the last 3 games against Oklahoma, Kansas State, and Oklahoma State. So I think this is a tough route to get through, and I think that their route is almost over, almost puts an end to it if they don't win against Texas. I agree with you. I like that pick. All right, my pick here, and we'll end out here today, is Louisville. This is the Louisville Cardinals. Again, look at me going to the ACC. It just does something to me, Steve. I tell you what. But the Louisville Cardinals are off just like West Virginia to a 2-2 start. They got absolutely killed by Syracuse at the beginning of the season. We started to find out that Syracuse was for real. Win against UCF, close loss against Florida State, which we know now that Florida State is a very good football team. Florida State had some injuries in that one. And then they win against USF, South Florida. So they head against Boston College. Should be an easy win for Louisville. I think Louisville is a better team than Boston College. Boston College has been the laughingstock of the ACC. Probably the most disappointing team in all of college football this year, in my opinion, is Boston College. But when you look at this football team, 2-2, so they got to find a way to get 4 more wins to get to 6-6, just like West Virginia in this case. Boston College and Virginia are the next 2 matchups. I think they can win those, move to 4-2, but then they play Pitt, then they play Wake Forest. That might be tough. So let's just say they lose those 2, go to 4-4. They got to find a way to win 2 games against James Madison, who is not a easy team this year. That they might have thought that might have been an easy win on their schedule, just heading into the Sun Belt for the first time, being team number 131, getting into the FBS. They're like the best defense in all of the nation right now when it comes to total defense. They're on the top. So I don't know if that's an easy win. That might be a tough one. Then they play Clemson. Then they play NC State. And then for some reason, not sure why they did this to themselves, but at the end of the year, their final game of the year is against number 7 Kentucky. So good luck finding a way to get 4 out of this one. I think the only way they do that, though, is with a win against Boston College today to keep them in the loop, keep them even in the running. They have to win the next 2 weeks, move to 4-2, and then find a way to maybe beat Pitt and then play well against James Madison. I think that's their only route to get the 6 wins. I think that's going to be a tough battle.
Yeah, well, they almost have to play Kentucky, though. I'm really happy that they're on that schedule. I mean, it's just as much as important in football as it is in basketball, and certainly Kentucky is a basketball state.
Right.
But Louisville is a fascinating team because they seem to find a way to get themselves bowl eligible just about every year. I mean, sometimes they're really, really good. In this ACC, I think they are overmatched. They're good. They have to pull up some upsets. But no, I like Louisville potentially getting to a bowl thing. I think that's a great pick because, again, it's Louisville's one of those schools that gets overlooked. But then you go back over the course of 4 years, 6 years, 10 years, and you look, well, Louisville had some pretty good football teams. They've turned out some NFL caliber talent. So that's a great pick. I mean, I think Louisville's going to toy with Boston College. I agree. Boston College is so disappointing, but Louisville's a team to follow now going as we get into bowl season.
Yeah, I agree. I think the ACC is, again, another one of those fun conferences. I don't think they're as deep as the Pac-12 or the Big 12 this year, but still fun with those matchups. Louisville's a team that, and we saw against Florida State, that they could keep it interesting in one of those matchups. So maybe they do the same against the Clemson or NC State, or I could easily see a Pitt versus Louisville be a really good, coin flip. And that might be a matchup that, if they can win, they can sneak into the 6-win mark. So I like that. All right, everyone. Well, thank you for joining us for this matchup. We'll save that last topic, Steve, for our Monday show.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you so much for joining us. This was a great episode. We'll be back here Monday. This is our only live show, but hit us up on the feeds and on YouTube. Monday morning, we'll be back for Overreaction Monday. I think we're going to have a lot to talk about with some overreactions here, especially with all of these crazy games that we have going on the slate. Enjoy it. But until then, be sure to hit us up, like, comment, subscribe. If you notice, we're on a brand new YouTube page and a brand new podcast feed. So we're trying to grow that one up. So thank you again, as always. And we'll be back here for another episode live next Saturday. So thanks for joining us. We'll be back here next time.